I remember when I was working in the hospital as a chaplain in Houston, when I was just a young seminarian, and I was called to the ICU unit where this young man who had caught hepatitis was quickly fading, all of his body functions shutting down one after the other. And I was really taken aback a bit by the look. He was crayon yellow, and it's still awake and still conscious, but in a lot of pain in spite of all the medication. And his family was there, and I came in to pray with them. But as soon as I got near him, his mother, I guess, seeing my collar and my little tag saying chaplain, immediately physically grabbed me and started, shouting, "Why would God do this? Why would God do this? We've prayed and we've prayed and we prayed, and God doesn't hear." And suddenly, Ricky, that fellow, I'll never forget, raised his arm rather weakly and pointed and just said two words, "God hear." And then he repeated it, "God hear." And then he never spoke another word until he passed away. And of course, I was thinking of that when he said it, "God hear." I didn't know if he meant God hears or God is here. And I began to realize I think he meant both. That just because things don't, happen the way we want them or we plan them, to ask the question why is actually a bit foolish. Because even if we knew why, that wouldn't necessarily tell us what to do about it. What we need to know is, what is it I need to do now? Because we're not the masters of the universe. We don't run everything. And I think that's why the coronavirus is so frightening to us, because it makes us face so clearly our own humanity, our own limitations. We're used to, putting people on the moon and photographing Venus or something and, reattaching severed limbs and jetting through space to travel the worlds and all these things we take for granted as if, hey, we are humans and this is the 21st century and, we rock. And now suddenly everything comes to a screeching halt because we're not in charge and we don't know everything. But what we do know is who we are, a human family. And we really do know what to do. To love, to be patient, to be kind, forgiving, generous, good, gentle. And maybe that's what's frightening too about the situation. We're not always sure that we can be all of that. If we're only worried about, a medical situation or some miracle vaccine, that almost seems easier. Because we can just make something in a factory, in a laboratory, and give it to everybody, and then problem solved. But who are we while we're doing that? We have to do that. And so to be honest, it really annoys me a bit when I hear people or see online, people, it's either a test from God, it's God's punishment for our evilness, it's a wonderful blessing so that we learn to love one another. I don't know. Because I don't know always the mind of God. But what we know is it exists. And what are we to do now with it? Because we can't figure out why. And I don't think, it can be either this terrible punishment or this wonderful blessing, because God's not a jerk. There's so many wonderful ways that God teaches us. So many wonderful ways that God kind of, wakes us up and gives us a kick in the butt. But God is love. So I certainly don't think that God is a jerk who would somehow do this. But things happen. There's a rhythm. God allows because we're free. And if we weren't free, we couldn't love. But freedom also has consequences beyond ourselves. And maybe that's how things got so messed up. But now the question is, what are we going to do about it? And that is kind of exciting, because it's now for you and me to be who we are really, who we're called to be, better than we thought we could be, to push back those limits we thought we had, to show what we're made of, to have that courage, to have that faith, to have that love, that gentleness, that kindness, to be creative, to go beyond ourselves, to be like Ricky, who remembered God here, God here, God's here. Share that. Why? God alone knows. What do we do now? You've got to answer that. I think you can. Let's remember who we are, and let's be who God created us to be. Have a great day.